Hi, Coach. You have shared your high opinion of Neil Pionk with us when he played for the Rangers. So I'm wondering, since he started playing for you, what's been the root of his progress, and how much more has he earned your trust?
Yeah, I mean, solely based on his consistency, right from the time he showed up here, he's been just an incredibly impactful defenseman in a bunch of different areas. Power play numbers from last year, uh, leading offensive numbers from this year, but his, taking on that role with their Forsberg this year, playing against the other team's best a lot of nights. But he has played an incredibly intense, consistent game. There's been very little variation in his game night after night, which builds that trust that you have in a guy. So you play him big minutes and you almost stop coaching him in some ways because you know what you're going to get every night. But that hallmark of consistency for defensemen is so hard to achieve. But he's done it in a short period of time as a young player. He's been fantastic for us.
We'll go next to Paul Friesen from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, Paul, I know I asked you about your reaction to the COVID outbreaks elsewhere, but boy, the one in Vancouver seems to be at another level now with the variant. Just a whole nother level of concern from you guys as a team and as a league in general.
I would guess, because we haven't seen in Canada this sizable one, and maybe had gotten to a point prior to Montreal where we felt pretty good, pretty safe, pretty isolated up here, and it's something that they dealt with in the States, but we haven't had to deal with. And then to have one as big, then I've really felt, Paul, here, and I have no idea about the Vancouver situation. You're not in it daily. That Rob Millet's our head athletic therapist, usually a pretty easygoing guy. He hasn't been when it's come to this, and that goes back to the bubble in the summer, man. He's honest, and I think he's really developed some strong habits to the point I would have said to you prior to the Vancouver story, I didn't have a whole lot of concern about our situation. And part of that was in the last month we were on the road so much where you're even more contained, right? Because you don't have family members coming in and out of your home. But this one's kind of said, hey, you know what, nobody can relax. And even if you do it right, you may not, you may, suffer some, whether it's bad luck or whatever you want to call it. You just can't let your foot off the gas pedal in terms of your vigilance and what you're doing. So, but our guy's been honest right from day one. And, like I'd said kind of the last time I was asked, I'm far more likely to be caught wearing my mask in places I don't need it now than walking around without it. It's become a habit here. And I think our medical staff has done a real good job developing those habits.
We'll go next to Mike McIntyre from the Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Afternoon, Paul. Life can move pretty quick in the hockey world, and I want to ask you about Anton Forsberg. I don't know how much you dealt with him when he was on your taxi squad. He's had quite a yo-yo season here, and there he was last night beating the Montreal Canadiens on Hockey Night in Canada. I don't know if he's going to play tomorrow, but just maybe share any experiences you had with his brief time here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, he was a really good pro here. So we talked once about the fact that there really wasn't much for us to talk about. We understood the situation was in. He understood it. But there's an example of a guy that didn't allow a difficult situation to affect his ability to prepare for an unknown opportunity. So it's a real good lesson there. Like, he worked harder, and I didn't see him in enough practices really to get a gauge on where he's at, but Wade Flaherty was very positive about him as a goaltender and said, yeah, this guy can play. But again, we're not running normal practices. He really never had an opportunity here to show that he could do it, but he deserves the credit. I think, Wade did a good job of putting him in a work environment that allowed it to happen. But, that's a tough situation for guys, especially if you don't know if it's ever going to get better. Like, he doesn't look at his situation and say, hey, I got to get through this stretch of time and I'm going to get my chance in the NHL. He didn't know that. So give him all the credit in the world. He worked hard. He got himself prepared, and we know that not as a subjective statement. Clearly he did, because he went into the net and has looked NHL ready and right.
We'll go back to Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
Well, what makes the Senators a dangerous team to play against? They've been giving a lot of teams difficulty lately here.
They're just better than anybody gave them a credit for at the start. And maybe that still happens. I don't think we ever looked at them that. They're a hard out. They're a hard game. They've got good skill. They've got good veterans. They play hard. They're well coached, compete. And in all our games that we've played, I think there might have been one that may have gotten away from them toward the end of the second period, but it's been a grinder, right? They beat us late one night on a shot tip. So we have never really looked, at least in the coaching staff, when they put the lineup at the start of the year, we thought, well, this team's a whole lot better than maybe people will give them credit for. And then when you watch them play and almost listen to how they're viewed, you know, they got some good young talent and they kind of maybe pat them on the heads and say they'll be good someday. I've never really looked at that team. Anybody that works that hard, it's got skill, it's got good veterans, they get good goaltending, they can beat you on any night. So it's a good team.
We'll go back to Mike McIntyre from the Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, just one on Logan Stanley and his use on the penalty kill the other night. I know Josh was in the box at the time. I guess, what did you like what you saw from Logan in that role, and would you go back to that at some point? If
Sure, liked it a lot. He's, you know, he would have gone through some time here than just video wise watching our penalty kill, and then in games watching, you get there is some experience to that. It's something he's done in the past. We like the size of him. He's, you know, showing now that he's willing to block shots. He's willing to do all those hard things, but he's got such a good set of hands on him that if it's on his stick, he's got a good chance in the clear. And that's a skill. That not everybody can do that. They can corral that puck and get it down the 200 feet. It's a big part of penalty killing. So we see him as developing into that kind of player. And we're you know, he's going to get the opportunity to do, whether it's an injury or somebody in the penalty box. And I think waiting a little while before you threw that on his plate lets him build some confidence going out there too.
We'll go next to Scott Billick from the Sun. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Paul, I'm just going to stay on Logan here. It's a very small play in the context of the game, but Logan has the opportunity, and he's taking a lot of shots from the point. Oftentimes the puck hits his stick and he's putting on net. He fires one into the slot, high slot, looking for a tip off Blake Wheeler in the Toronto game, or the last Toronto game. Is that an evolution of his just kind of vision, looking, you know, what he's looking at? I mean, obviously this guy has offensive talent, but you know, at the NHL, it's different when you translate that from, you know, say junior to the AHL to the NHL. Is that just him looking for something different, or he said it was, you know, he saw, you know, sticks and bodies in the lane, so, and he saw Wheeler open, and guys are so gifted offensively in this league and in the right position that he can look for that. But is that him, I guess, seeing the play, seeing the game kind of playing out in front of him better?
I think there's two pieces to it. And one, it's the exact same idea of having, you know, a simple original breakout pass idea and then finding another one that might be better. So the first thing we want to do is get it moving as quick as we possibly can and do the basics well. And then some players can see the next layer, right? The next option. So that idea of recognizing the shot lane's gone. If some players will never get to that next layer where they've got the poise and the patience. The part of it is to be able to get your head off, you know, your eyes off the puck and onto your options. That's a skill in itself. Some guys will roll it back down behind the net, which is fine. That's what they're built to do. But we know that he has the ability to see through the forechecking pressure and find different layers. So we think that that's just a natural progression as he gets more comfortable on the puck and he feels the confidence. And it's not even just the coaches, right? The players on the bench, they start wanting you to be able to use that skill set and do more. So they understand if one goes and it doesn't work for you, he's got the skill set to do it. So he's encouraged certainly, but we love the fact that his first option is usually the one he takes. And if he can get the puck to the net, he does.
And final question to Paul Friesen from the Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Probably a quick one to wrap it up here. You said after the last game, Paul, that you're not going to use those two Toronto games as a barometer for the offense that your top two lines have produced. What did you mean by that? Just that it's too soon? You want to give them more time, or something else?
So I thought there was offense there that didn't quite get connected on. Stastny backdoor. It happened with Kyle Connor kind of backdoor. I thought there was there. Now, there wasn't a tremendous amount of offense in that game. But I didn't expect there to be, right? They're a good checking team in some ways. Like we didn't have a lot to drive, a lot of gas in the tank to drive an awful lot of offense. But even when I put these lines together, one of the questions, like it's almost like they're going to have to prove that they can work, because it's almost, each line's almost too heavily weighted to one thing, right? So in a way, there can be time where there's too much skill on a line, let's say not enough weight to it. And that's when I'm talking about matchups. That's what I mean. Like, I like, why wouldn't you like Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and Nikolai Ehlers? They do some brilliant things. And then you'll get into a game where they're not matched against the line that's really going to allow that, or it doesn't allow that skill set to truly come out. Then you start thinking it's a little bit light. Or you've got, I like the idea of Wheeler and Dubois playing together a lot, because I think there's a lot of growth there for Dubois in that style of game. So that's a positive. I'm going to be careful about breaking that Lowry lineup, because it's specific to what it can do. So I guess my answer to your question is I'm going to be patient in that, but I am looking for how much can I play that Scheifele line as a line together? And if there's one movement on the wings, which side would you go to first? And in the back of your mind, you always have Connor Scheifele and Wheeler, have won a playoff series against, at that time, the best team in the NHL, right? They ran a 7-game series, Mark set an NHL record for row goals. So that's right. Is there enough there, or can I delay this long enough that Pierre-Luc becomes more comfortable? Can I find a line for Stastny, Dubois, and Ehlers? If that's, that could be really, really good if I can get them out again against the right people. So there's a bunch of things that we want to learn. Like we want to learn by the end of the year. You are going to see these lines change. But I'm not going to use, there was enough good in those 2 games that I'm not doing it in today's practice and to start the game. But in truth, if I got that feeling on the bench by the matchup with Ottawa, I'd have no problem changing after the first into the second next game.